Melissa Flockhart, Penny Marshall, David L. Lander. Next, Rosie.
Bush wins. Headline of the hour, headline of the year. Our CBS News Election Night Campaign 2000 headline of the hour. Texas Governor George Bush is elected the 43rd President of the United States, the first elected president of the 21st century. We're told that Vice President Al Gore has called Governor Bush in Texas. We go to Austin, Texas. No, we're going to go to Nashville and John Roberts. John?
Dan, the motorcade that the Vice President is traveling in rolled out of the hotel that he's been staying in all afternoon about a minute ago. He's on his way over here to the War Memorial Plaza, where he will give his concession speech to the Texas governor. Called him a few minutes ago to congratulate him on the win. A hard-fought battle, as you said earlier, Dan, on both sides. The last day of this campaign for the Vice President was 30 hours long, beginning at a John Deere factory in Waterloo, Iowa, in a driving rain at 5:30 in the morning. And ending at noon today when he cast his vote in Carthage, Tennessee. And now we're back to the driving rain again, as he's expected here in the next few minutes. And Dan, this is 24 years of political history for Al Gore coming to an end tonight. Obviously, he'll finish out his term as vice president. We're not exactly sure what it is that he'll do after January 20th. He's been in politics most of his life. He was an investigative journalist prior to this at the Tennessean newspaper here in Nashville. He has suggested when asked what he would do if he lost, and he never ever wanted to give up the notion that he might lose, but he did say before a crowd of people at one of those town hall meetings that he had that he would probably like to write if he weren't in politics. So it looks as though he will get plenty of opportunity to do that. Dan?
John Roberts, we're expecting any time to hear from Vice President Gore, and along the way we're staying on the air so we can hear from the victorious George Bush. You talk about the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Vice President Gore has to walk out in the rain in Nashville. There is no joy in Nashville among the Democrats of the Gore forces. In the rain, make his concession speech. Politics can be absolutely exhilarating, and Al Gore has known those moments of thrilling victory over a long political career, winning House races in Congress, winning Senate races, winning the vice presidency not once but twice. But now he has to stand up and face the furnace, politically speaking, make a concession speech, which for all intents and purposes probably means the end of his political career, but who knows? It's not likely that he could come back and make another race for the presidency, not likely. And among the sad notes for Al Gore is that Al Gore's father was defeated 30 years ago this week for re-election to the United States Senate. The Richard Nixon and Republican forces put Al Gore's father high on the list of Southern senators to be defeated, and they beat him. That ended Al Gore's father's career 30 years ago this week. Now, no one can yet say that Al Gore won't come back and maybe run for a congressional seat or a Senate seat. It seems highly unlikely at this moment, but hey, strange things happen in politics. Do they ever? As we've learned tonight. So Bush wins. Gore is on his way apparently to make his concession speech after having talked to Governor Bush in Austin, and we do expect to hear from Governor Bush. Now, let's get caught up on some little odds and ends of business. Not so odd at that. In the governor's races, Leslie, we have some decisions.
We have a couple. We have Montana. The governor of Montana, a Republican, Judy Martz, has beaten the Democrat, Mark O'Keefe, for the Montana's governor chair. Because she won this race, there are 3 women governors in the country now. After tonight, there will be 5 women governors. And, Dan, now that George Bush is about to become president, there'll be a new governor of Texas. And it will be the lieutenant governor, Rick Perry, 50 years old, a Democrat turned Republican. And we have one outstanding governor's race still too close to call, the one in Missouri, between the state treasurer, Bob Holden, and a U.S. Congressman, Jim Talent, not called yet.
Well, Kay Bailey Hutchison, who held on to a Republican Senate seat and won overwhelmingly tonight in Texas. A lot of talk in Texas that Kay Bailey Hutchison may want to go down and run for governor now that George Bush has been elevated to the presidency. True, the lieutenant governor now is elevated to the governorship, but no one would be surprised in Texas to see Kay Bailey Hutchison come in and make that race for governor, although she has not said that she's going to do that. I mean, this is no self-serving way, but I talked to her very recently, and she was, I don't think she'd argue the word, coy about it. She made it clear, yeah, I might think about it, but it's early. Bob Schieffer, Senate races. Let's review where we are.
We still have that race out there in Michigan, Dan, where Debbie Stabenow is challenging the Republican incumbent, Spence Abraham. We still have this race listed as too close to call. Now, if Debbie Stabenow wins that race, it means we'll have a record 13 women in the Senate. We've elected 3 tonight, so that will bring it up to 12. If she wins, that would make 13 women in the Senate. More importantly, it would mean 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans in the Senate.
And those women include Hillary Rodham Clinton, the First Lady of the United States, who was elected to the Senate from New York tonight. Folks, let me show you the national vote to give you an idea, not that you need one at this hour, but how very, very close this race has been. It's a 48% for each candidate dead heat. A number of the polls, most of the reputable polls, including our CBS News poll, said it was a statistical dead heat, and that's what it turns out to be. And as of this hour, there are about 500,000 votes separating the two. Now, let's say more than that. Yeah, about, say, a little bit less than 500,000 votes. Don't know how many votes that would be per precinct, but it might be as low as 1 vote per precinct. Now, Bob Schieffer, you have something about Florida.
This is just handed me, and just to underline how close it was, Florida is where it all happened. This is what did it for George Bush. With 99% of the precincts in, Bush is leading in Florida by 11,000 votes out of 6 million votes cast in Florida. That's 1/50th of 1%. Now, you tell me that an individual's vote doesn't count.
Yes, and particularly with young people who, in high percentages, didn't vote in this election. It's the American way. If you don't vote, you don't get to whine. Ed Bradley.
And almost half the people in this country didn't vote. If we look out at the turnout this year, it is a little bit higher than it was 4 years ago when it was 49%. It's up to almost 51%. But essentially that means that half of the people either feel they are disenfranchised, they're not part of the system, or that they have no reason to vote, they just don't care to vote. Some people think that their vote doesn't make a difference. But if you look at what happened in this race and how close it is, you know, you could have had totally different candidates if people had participated in the primaries, because even fewer people participate in the primaries. But in this election, just about half of the people who could vote if they had registered in this country bothered to register and vote.
You know, having never run for public office, I can't say how it is, but I suspect it's the same way as it is in sports and a lot of other things. In many ways, you'd rather get beat 60-0 than to get beat by 1 point in the fading moments of the game. Now, Florida, with 99% of the precincts in, and I want to repeat this, what Bob Schieffer said a moment ago, Bush leads by 11,000 votes out of 6 million votes cast in Florida. Smelling salts for all Democrats, please. 1/50th of 1% made the difference in Florida, which in turn made the difference in the whole presidential race. Prepared to say there may never have been, on the basis of what we know so far, a presidential race any closer than this one. Some historian may want to argue with that, and call Bob Schieffer day after tomorrow if he wants to. The numbers look this way. In the popular vote, 48% to 48%. We now have what? Well, fewer than 200,000 votes separating these two at the end. A virtual dead heat. 1 vote per precinct or fewer would probably have turned the tide in this election. And in the Electoral College right now, it sets 271. It takes 270 to win. So Bush is triumphant with 1 electoral vote difference. Now, Wisconsin with 11 electoral votes and Oregon with 7 are still out there, and we'll have to see how they go. But, you know, this is a stunner, and I'm going to say it for a 3rd time because, you know, I have been to goat ropings and space shots, and I've covered presidential elections since the 1950s, and I have never seen anything like this. Take a good look, folks. You haven't seen it before, and you're not likely to see it again in your lifetime. Florida, with 99% of the precincts in, Bush leads by 11,000 votes out of 6 million Florida votes cast. 1/50th of 1% made the difference in Florida, and therefore made the difference in the whole presidential race. Ed Bradley.
Well, I don't know what you do to get people to vote in this country. I mean, I think that they say that democracy gives you the right to stay home. But when you look at what is at stake for people in this country, how can someone stay home and not have a say in who represents us on a local level and a national level? Because it affects each and every one of us every single day.
Well, Leslie Stahl, there is a theory that because the United States of America basically has had peace and prosperity for an unprecedentedly long time, that people feel pretty good and they're kind of blasé about things and say, in effect, well, yeah, yes, it's my responsibility to vote, but you know, things are pretty good. And so I think things will rock along. Now, you counter that with so many people say, as this is my opinion, clearly labeled as an excuse, well, my vote doesn't make any difference. Tonight puts the lie to that latter.
That certainly does. I have a theory about turnout. It's my own personal theory. It has to do with working mothers, because so many women work today, and we have to get home. And we want our husbands to come right home. Voting isn't the way it used to be. We don't want to make that stop. When you look out on the West Coast, where more and more people are voting by mail, you have Oregon, where the entire state voted by mail. That's going to be the future. I'd love to see if the Oregon turnout was as high as they predicted. They said it was going to be 85% out there.
I agree with you one thing. We're at on the front edge of the digital age, and how people vote has got to change. With all respect, Leslie, and you and I have been to this rodeo many, many times. It's not an excuse to say, well, I'm a working mother and I got to work.
It's not an excuse.
And not an excuse to say, well, my husband gets home and he's tired. In a country such as this, no excuses. And I believe, Ed, it's right that about what I'm attempting to say, at least 75 million Americans who are eligible to vote at least did not vote today.
It's not an excuse. You're absolutely right. But I do think that a lot of people out there are harried and they want to get home to their kids.
Well, you know, I have this feeling that an awful lot of Republicans out there saying, hey, time to celebrate, time to party. Let's let the good times roll, because George Bush has won the presidency. The worst the Republicans can do is have a 50-50 split in the Senate, which means they retain their control of the Senate, because Dick Cheney, the new vice president, would decide any tie votes. And while it's by a very small margin, the Republicans are assured, we think, of controlling the new House. Now let's go to Wisconsin. Remember, it's still out there, 11 electoral votes. Let me show you the actual votes in and counted presidential race in Wisconsin. We have just about a minute and a half to Al Gore supposed to show up. We'd like to get this Wisconsin thing up because I believe there's only a 1,000 vote difference now in the Wisconsin vote. There it is, 48% to 48% right. About a 1,000 vote difference between these two, with Nader getting 4%. Now let's go to John Roberts in Tennessee, where in the rain, Vice President Gore, having lost oh so close, among the toughest phrases in the English language, John Roberts, what might have been?
You know, Dan, a campaign that ran at least 18 months, but you could say that it ran 24 years, because he has been preparing since he first ran for Congress from Tennessee in 1976 to be president of these United States, really fulfilling a dream that I believe his parents had for him since he was born and since his birth was announced on the front page of Tennessee newspapers. But that is a dream that came to an end tonight in much the same way as it did in 1988, though in 1988 he was knocked out of the primaries. Tonight he was knocked out of the final presidential race by a margin that is oh so close. The last time anybody can remember somebody running for the presidency from Tennessee in a race that was that close was in 1844. James Polk, like Al Gore, lost Tennessee but won the presidency. And I guess in the last little bit of political irony here, Al Gore, as president of the Senate, will announce the official tally of the electoral votes when they're taken, and he will be the one who announces that George Bush is the president-elect of the United States. Dan?
John Roberts, stay with us here. We're awaiting the vice president's appearance there in the rain in Nashville. Florida turns out to be even closer than we thought. If you can imagine that, hard for me to do so. It's actually, as it now stands, a little less than 1/5 of 1% was the margin for George Bush in Florida. 10,800 votes out of close to 6 million cast. 1/5 of 1% in Florida gave the state's 25 electoral votes to George Bush, and that gave him the Electoral College victory. They'll be writing about this one in the history